Falling in love is a bit of a sickness because we go a bit insane, crazy. But if that insanity lasts for a long time and you can't find your inner compass, if you lose your inner self, then I think that that's a sign of an imbalance. And if this imbalance goes on and is laced with control and jealousy, then is it in fact love or is it an obsession? Hello Moodlings, my name is Dr. Nicole Lunan and I'm the CEO and co-founder of MoodMe, a new app that allows you to share over 400 and plus moods, emotions, and desires with your partner, thus making communication simple, fun, and super easy. So today we're going to be talking about a really interesting concept. We're going to be talking about the difference between love and obsession. To love or to obsess? That is the question. Most of this information gathered in this video is presented as a larger question rather than a statement. What is the difference between love and obsession? Love itself is a hard construct to define, and even the most reputable researchers and psychologists struggle to narrow down what it means to love another person. Obsession, albeit a somewhat easier thing to define than love, however, those boundaries between the two can be easily crossed and confused. An obsession isn't something to be ashamed of because, like love, it can portray itself in levels and degrees. It may not look like stalking someone, however, it could look like silently glancing over at your boo's phone to see who he's texting. It may not look like placing a tracking device in your lover's car. However, it may look like looking at who they added on Instagram or asking to share their location. Is it me, or is obsession like a little bit more accepted in today's society, especially with social media? You can literally stalk and see where people are, what they're doing, who they're hanging out with. You can even track people's location by their iPhone. So, is that love to want to be tracking them all the time, to want to know what they're doing? To be peeking underneath the covers to see, even though they may not know that you're actually looking? Or does that describe obsession? Love is a healthy emotion that grows between two people once they've invested time and energy into really getting to know one another. Flaws, pet peeves, and all. People who are in love, they trust each other. There's no questions asked. However, obsession is different. In the beginning, it might feel a lot like love. It makes your heart race and you can't think of anything else other than this person. And it makes you feel like you're floating on a cloud. Love, without the foundation of trust and balance, can lead to obsession. Obsession is a constricting and roller coaster emotion that becomes more and more suffocating over time. Obsession's main characteristic is lack of trust. One partner does not trust the other one to the point that jealousy and control ensues. Once you get that seed of doubt, when the seed of lack of trust, of mistrust, of what is my partner doing at this point? I can't trust that they have my best interest at heart. That seed of doubt is contagious. It starts to spread all over the place. And it may not be apparent at the beginning, but over time, you'll start to see behavioral changes. You'll start to be wondering who they're texting, who they're spending their time with. You'll start to question every single thing about that person because you want to make sure that your reality, your version of who you see your lover to be, actually matches the person that they are. So let's discuss the differences between love and obsession. Obsession is like vines, flowing from the creator to its object of affection. Unfortunately, obsession is a double-edged sword. Even though it feels like the creator has control over the vines wrap around their body nonetheless before they reach their prey. The vine begins its first wrap around its beloved's ankle and slowly works itself up, coiling around the torso and the arms like a snake. The vines constrict, thus both parties lose air. They lose their freedom because the vines are so tight that neither of them can move. And we wonder how and why both people can live this way. Well, after a while, the pain from the vines don't hurt as bad. In fact, they begin to feel comforted by this pain. They are bonded by this pain because it ties the two of them together, almost like children wrapped safely in the mother's womb. However, there is no real safety with obsession, only comfort in the concept of the devil you know. And if you're a visual person, you can view love as air. It takes no real shape or form because it's expansive and you cannot capture it in your hand to hold it, no matter how hard we try. It's invisible and yet a force of nature. One of the highest vibrations known to humans. Love is omnipresent. It's always there, silently nourishing us, encouraging us to live, to exist, to breathe. Love in its purest form is the opposite of obsession. Love gives you wings so that you can fly, so that you are not a songless yellow canary trapped in a silver cage, but one that glides through the air with a nest in an oak tree that it calls home. Okay, so we got those two visuals, right? We got love, which gives you wings so that you can fly and be free, but you still have a home to come back to, but it's not a cage. We got obsession, vines wrapped around you. Can't move, you're tied to this other person who also has vines wrapped around them. I kind of think that love and obsession can happen in the same relationship. I think relationships go through phases, and maybe at the beginning where the dopamine levels are super high and you're in the honeymoon phase, you feel really obsessed, right? You feel like, who are you? There's not a lot of trust there, so the foundation for love isn't super solid. But then as time goes on, those vines kind of slither off you, you begin creating your wings and you're able to fly because you begin to learn who this person is. However, an incident happens where betrayal occurs. It could be something small, like your person is talking to another, you saw at a party, they're talking to somebody else. And all of a sudden, those vines start slithering out again and start enclosing your partner because obsession is built off of lack of trust. And let's stop thinking that you have to be crazy to experience obsession. I think if we're kind of really honest here between you and me, we're not gonna tell anybody, you've probably experienced it before because love is insane. It's like a huge drug and it gets us to do wild and maddening things. It gets us to think about people in ways that we've never ever thought that we would think about them. And we try to grasp it with our hands. We try to hold on to it and we will do whatever it takes to do that. So it's such an easy line to cross between love and obsession. And you don't have to be crazy or have some type of disorder to feel obsessed about somebody. And it doesn't need to go so far as to murdering somebody, stalking somebody. It's not a movie. These are emotions and they're real. When two people fall in love, and it's a healthy form of love, they maintain their individual identities and interests. They are not threatened when their partner likes to spend time with their family, friends without them. They are happy for them and proud of their partner's accomplishments, even when those accomplishments have nothing to do with them. With obsession, it becomes nearly impossible to be without one another. The obsessive partner feels a physical need and desire and thirst to be with the object of their desire every day and to know exactly what they're doing, who they're with whenever they're not together. Negative feelings such as jealousy and paranoia begin to creep into the relationship. The obsessive individual suspects that their partner may be cheating or that everything they do or say is somehow a reflection about how they feel about them. With obsession, there is no boundary between your life and another's. Your thoughts begin to rotate around the object of your affection, and no matter how hard you try, you cannot get your thoughts to be about anybody else. Obsession in many ways is like addiction, because the object of your affection gives you a rush whenever you interact with them, kind of like a drug addiction. But when your addiction is a walking and living person, things can get a little bit tricky. Because your obsession, your addiction has a mind of its own, because it can choose to leave you at will, to disappear, to walk away. With a drug addiction, as long as you keep your job, you're certainly able to control buying or obtaining your obsession. But for an obsession over a person, they have free will, and therefore they cannot be easily contained or controlled. And who is to say that you will ever find another person who can give you that type of high? So there's a lot of fear and scarcity behind obsession, to the point that it plays dark stories in your mind and creates paranoia. So here's the catch with trying to trap somebody, to obsess over them, to get them to stay, to want to keep them so bad that it kind of suffocates them. That's a surefire way to push them away. So obsession is a funny thing because you want them to stay. You have these vines wrapped around them. You created this home for them that you think is the best for them. However, what it does is the opposite effect. It actually constricts them so much that they crave freedom, that they crave the very opposite of what you're actually offering. Obsession may be combined with the feeling of control, that you know better for this person's life, and taking it one step further, that you take action toward creating this better life for the other person so that you forget to live a life of your own. You take responsibility for creating this life for the other person so much that you forget to live your own life and you lose your sense of self. Have you seen You? Joel Goldberg creates a life for Beck that he thinks she should be living without including her on his decisions. In that which way, he traps her in a neat little cage, which he really does trap her in at the end. And the cage is a metaphor for feeling trapped in a life that Beck didn't really choose for herself, in a cage that was fueled by obsession, jealousy, and control. Obsession takes freedom away from both parties. It takes freedom from the person who is obsessed because they completely lose their sense of self and trying to create the cage to hold their object of affection. Because they are ultimately afraid that they aren't worthy enough on their own for this person to stay. The person who is trapped loses their freedom because they have no choice. They feel like they have no choice to live their life without external consequences, without making their partner mad. But one has to question the person who is trapped.
How did you allow it to get this far? And is this something that you secretly desire?
With You, Beck was constantly seen flirting, throwing herself at men, wanting someone to desire her. Was she secretly hoping and wishing that someone would love her, lust over her, or become so addicted to her that they would do absolutely anything, that they would never leave? So that opens up an entirely new question.
Do you like to be obsessed over?
And I know this sounds like a crazy question, do you like to be obsessed over? But get this story and I'll tell it really quick. There was one girl that I knew that really liked to date guys who are in jail. And they get these visits, I forget what they're called, but they're allowed to see each other and kind of have some intimate time. But she liked to date guys who were in jail because she wanted to be the only one that he could see, the only one that he could desire, complete object of affection. So does she want to be obsessed over? I would say yes on this one. Obsession is shrouded with jealousy, but many can say that they kind of like to make their partner jealous because it indicates that they care. My point here is that there are levels to obsession, jealousy. What is your level? And how does your level of obsession relate to passion? And how does that passion relate to sex? Does obsession, passion, jealousy, does that create this wild sex life? I've always wondered that. How does the crazy, volatile relationship shrouded with jealousy and obsession relate to them having this wild and out of this world sex? Is it possible that each person kind of wants to be obsessed over and that fuels that fiery sex? So there's this theory, and I don't use the term crazy in a clinical sense because we're not going to talk about it that way, but let's just say wild and volatile, that men kind of like this wild and volatile and obsessive women because that makes them good in bed. So that's kind of where I'm getting that from. Is it the more crazy, wild and volatile you are that it creates that wild sex life? Does obsession relate to having really intense and passionate sex? So there's this episode of How I Met Your Mother where Ted falls for this crazy woman named Jeanette. And so at first they saw each other on the train, and then she stalks him and finds out that he's a professor at a school. But then she pulls the fire alarm because she couldn't find him so she could meet him again, and so on and so on and so on. She ends up burning down his house. She ends up stealing keys to his place. And the whole time, Ted is so excited and so twisted and wrapped around with Jeanette that he can't see straight. So that's where that theory where it's like, okay, does obsession and wild, crazy volatility, do some people like that, depending on where they are in their life? Absolutely. Obviously with You, Joel Goldberg murders people for Beck. And this story is dramatized for entertainment, but obsession doesn't always look like how it does on TV and in movies. So let's take that murdering part out of the way. Did you like the way that Joe doted over Beck? Do you like how he helped her pursue her dreams, how he was constantly available, how he would do anything for her to succeed, how devoted he was for her? So much so that he began to lose himself in the process. And is it possible to have that heightened amount of passion and intensity and attraction without a little bit of obsession? Another famous couple that you can see this in real time with is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. This is an interesting tale because both seemingly were obsessed with each other. Both wanted control over the other and had a number of ways to get at it. Johnny's control consisted of money, fame, opportunities, and Amber's was more psychological, emotional, alluring, sexual, kind of like a siren. They both had vines wrapped around each other, tugging and pulling until the chaos became so great that it ripped them both apart. And publicly, I might add. The love stories glorified in movies, TV shows, books, poems, the characters are so taken by each other and they fall so hard that nothing else matters but this person. So is that love or is that obsession? Or is it possible that the two interplay with each other, dance with each other, and it's not something that we can help as humans who have egos? And one question that I have for everybody is, how can you have that wild and beautiful and passionate relationship without a little bit of volatility, without a little bit of obsession? I hope that this conversation, the difference between love and obsession, I hope that this conversation has opened up your mind to really seeing that there is no real black and white. Maybe there's not a huge difference between love and obsession, because I believe that with love, if you lose the trust, which in times with relationships, you can lose trust, but you can regain it too. But in those times where you don't have the trust and you're questioning and you're losing your sense of self to your partner, which happens from time to time, and you become obsessed, it's also possible for you to bring yourself out of obsession, to find your center, to rebalance your relationship again. So it's not good. I don't think it's good to look down on obsession as being such like, this is a bad thing, this is a bad thing, and love is a good thing. It's not black and white. There is a ton of gray area on the in-between. So I'd like to hear your take on the difference between love and obsession, on how you feel the two interplay with each other. Leave us a comment in the section below, subscribe, share, and like, and see you later, Moodlings.